Hey, bubbling, coming in, crushing this art. You already know. So, if we start to get into mathematics, right, because we need a little bit of information on the system we're using, right, just like if we're trying to learn anything about our zodiacal sign, right, it's useful to know about its relationship with all the other signs, right, and just what astrology means, right, and if we're not trying to go through that lane, then a lot of times it is useful to get an astrologer because that's someone who understands all the different relationships and how they're present in a current incarnation, right? So what is some of the principles of mathematics? Well, we know that it always keeps place by 10, right? We can go really easily and it helps us keep track. We can just go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, right? And then it will just go on from that too, right? 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, a million, right? And we can just keep going by 10, right? And we also realize something when we start to reduce numbers to get to maybe an inherent principle that's behind them, right? So for example, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll add numbers together, right? And something so interesting about the system that we use that I'll show you is that when we add numbers together, this is actually showing us where a number is referencing 9, right? Because for example, once we get to 10, right, say we have 9 numbers, right? Once we get to 10, we'd start over with 1, right? So then it would be 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, right? And then we have 19, right? And this is going by 9, right? And 19, 1 plus 9 is 10, 1 plus 0 is 1, right? So on the dial of 9, it's 1. And then we could go 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and then 28, right? 2 plus 8 is 10, 1 plus 0 is 1, right? And then 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, and then 37, right? 3 plus 7 is 10, and it will go on and so forth, right? So one of the interesting things to realize here is that is going a step back. Let's take this a step back now. 1, right? 1 is the principle of something, right? And so in relationships, 1 is always going to be present, right? And so this is just going back to sort of literally the basics, the idea of absence, right? And 0 and 1, something, and how they can play a role on each other to sort of create this scheme of sort of ticking, right? And going by 1 and start cycling, right? And sort of how this works is it's sort of 9 and 10. Because we see that 9, right, we can always figure out where something is on the dial of 9. 9 is present within all numbers, right? And so is 10, right? And one of the things that we can see is by 10, if we keep going by 9, right, like say, okay, we had 1, right? So by 10, it's on the first place, right? And then we had 19, right? So now we have, or no, we had 10, right? Because 1 plus 9 is 10, right? So we went from 9 in the first place to 0 in the first place, right? And then from 19, or from 10, we'd go to 19. So now we'd go to 9 in the first place, right? And then from there, if we add 9, we'd have 28, right? Which would have 8 in the first place. And then we'd have 37, 7. So you see how the first place is going down by 1 every time we're keeping the order of 9 in the same. So let me illustrate you this on this page here. So if we just start at 9, right? And 18, right? So all these will add up to 9, right? And what we'll see is it will go 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, 54, 63, 72, 81, and 90, right? And you'll see it even looks like a DNA sequence in that it goes 0 in the in the first place, right here, you can pretend there's a 0 in front of the 9, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? and then it would like wrap with the 0 here, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? But what happens, right, we see is the 10 place goes up by 1 while we keep the dial of 9 the same, right? And it will take 9 iterations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 iterations, or yeah, because it will go 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? Yeah, 9 iterations, and on the 10th, right, we'll see it'll wrap back around to where the first place is in line with the 10s. So, and look, what we'll see is the 10s will go back 1, right? If we look about where they are on the dial of 9, right, 10s, what this allows us to do is keep the 10s place in alignment with where it is on the dial of 9. So for example, 10 references 1 on the dial of 9, 20 references 2, right? And we can see this diagonal pattern all the way through. 30 references 3, 40, 4, 50, 5, 66, 77, 88, and 99, right? So that's just the interesting thing, is it will slowly go through, right, forward and down, and we'll see that it will take 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 before we make it to the end, right? And once we get to 100, we'll start again, right? And now we'll be back at the ones place, right? But now, instead of having 1 in the ones place, right, this would be the second one, right? Because it's by 9. Because this, when we get to 91, it would reset, right? Because we just got to 90. So then it would go 91, 1 in the first place, and it adds to 1. 92, 2 in the first place, and it adds to 2. 93, 3 in the first place, so on and so forth, right? And it would just keep going like that, so that we can keep track easily by adding numbers together of where they're on the dial of 9. And this ticks by 1 on the dial of 10 every time, as I showed you, right? Because if we go now to the dial of 10, right, and we look at where 9 is, right, we'll see that every time we add 10 to a number, we'll add actually 1 on the dial of 9, right? Because it would go 1 would equal 1, 11 would equal 2, 21, 3, 31, 4, so on and so forth, right? And now it would take only, until we get back to the same one, 9 times, right? Because after we go 9 times, right, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, once we get to the 10th time, it will actually go back to 1, right? Not only keeping the same 10s place, right, but now keeping the same 9s place, right? So this is where 90 is a real relevant number, in all honesty, in relationship to our system, right? And yeah, so this is just what we're doing when we're referencing a number on the dial of 9. We can actually reference the numbers that's built off of too, right? Because now we also have to understand there's 2 things in play here that are interweaving, right? This is keeping place by 9 and then allowing us to physically see it easily by 10, right? So this means all 10 numbers sort of have their own meaning, right? So its place, like let's say if it's 33, right? Or even if it's 43, or if it's 83, right? All those represent something, right? Because they're a certain place on the dial of 10, right? But they're all going to reference something different on the dial of 9, so they're a different modality, right? Because for example, 3 on the dial of 9 is 3, right? Whereas now if we go to 73, 7 plus 3 is 10, right? So it's 1, right? So the difference would be, these would both express the 3 principle, right? But 3 would be actually the 3 principle, right? In the dial of 9, it would express the cardinal realm and the mutable modality placement, right, of 3, whereas 73 would now express the cardinal realm but the individual placement of 3. So now by 90, right, we can always get a different expression of the same number with the same placement by 10 and modally. So for example, 1 will represent cardinality and the first digit, right? But if we add 90, now it will still be cardinal because 9 plus 1 is still 10, which would add to 1, right? So it's still 1 on the dial of 9, right? And now, yeah, it would still be the first placement because it would be 91, right? So, so that's a way that you can find numbers that you may like more, right? Because say the next one would be 181. Maybe you like 181 more than you like 1, right? And now they represent the same thing. And this is a way to represent math in order to understand that. So I think that's one of the best places to start. Is then, understanding that there are certain dials and sort of overarching levels in which all the numbers are expressions of, right? So say 1,200,003 is still an expression of 3, right? It's just that expression, right? Whereas, same by the dial of 9, right? Like 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, 54, you know, so on and so forth. They're all an expression of 9. They just have a different way of expressing it, right? Whereas then if we go 9, 99, 189, right? These have the same expressions of 9 and they have the same placement by 10, right? They're both ending with the number 9. So, yeah, that's a little bit of information, and I'll get into after then we discuss sort of the symbolic dials of astrology, right, and what we can sort of map on there. I'll come back and we'll sort of dive deeper into then what all the 9 numbers mean, what all the 10 numbers mean, and then, so A, Bubbling, Citra, Beach, out.